Ruslan.
Do you think Christian hip hop will ever reach a point where it's almost considered mainstream? Just because, like, when you look at like Scott said, like kind of like 20 years ago, and how the genres progressed. I mean, the quality of music, like, it wasn't that great, but eventually built up into like where we are now, into where Andy's song was played like in the strip club and all that.
Yeah.
Normally, like, Christians aren't really found or whatever.
Yeah.
It's a great thing, and I just wanted to know, like, do you think the space will ever be at a point where it just gets picked up and it just shoots up, like maybe mainstream, possibly?
Here's how I think it'll reach that point. I don't think it'll be in this like, yo, every Christian rapper is now going on The Breakfast Club and doing this really cool interview with Charlemagne the God, or whatever like gatekeepers there are. I don't know if it'll get there. But my thing is, I don't think it needs to. I think what needs to happen is everybody needs to keep being faithful to what's in front of them and making the most with what they have. And then different people will bubble up in different ways. I can't do what Andy and Lecrae can do. Like that, the Coming In Hot was a very focused and calculated move that they made in terms of like why they wrote this song, how they wrote the song, Andy thinking and really being methodical about how he writes music in general. That's not what I do, right? Like, but what I do, maybe they can't do, right? And so I could speak to a different tribe of people, right? And what I do and what they do, someone like Paul Russell does is totally different, or someone like Nick D is in a different ecosystem, or Toby, or whoever, right? There's folks in these different ecosystems, and I think it'll be more like this. I think as the world is growing with technology, the world's getting smaller, but it's also being more isolated. So there's more of these pockets of folks that are isolated. I think what Christians have to do is be intentional to not be like that. Like, we have to be intentional to say, we're not going to be polarized and just be one political ideology. We're not gonna be polarized and just be one social view. We're not gonna be polarized, right? We can think critically and we can see the nuance, and we can bounce and jump around. It's like, I don't know if you remember back in high school, right? There would be like, or at least in my high school, I don't know what it was like at your high school. There'd be the basketball players, there'd be the football players, there'd be the surfers, there'd be the skaters, right? And everybody kind of stayed in their own pockets, right? But then there would be those outliers. It would be those folks that can go from people group to people group to people group and seamlessly share all these different commonalities with different people while remaining themselves. And I feel like that, in my opinion, I feel like that is a way we could think about contextualizing the gospel is, hey, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do over here, and God keeps, gracing this channel. I'm gonna be faithful to it. Nick's gonna do what he's gonna do. Andy and those guys are gonna do what they're gonna do. Toby's gonna do what he's gonna do. Paul Russell's gonna do what he's gonna do. Hovey's gonna do what he's gonna do. And then, yes, I think we look up 5 years from now, and a lot of the poppin' artists are Christians. Why? Because the church community didn't want to just keep them for themselves and say, oh, we just need to keep it over here and keep it in our little Christian ghetto to play in front of our little conferences and our little youth groups and our little church events. No, we're going to go and support them and help them bubble up, right? If we like it. Like, I'm not saying don't support stuff you don't like. If you like it, support it. And I think that is what we could see happen. And we saw a glimpse of that happen with Reach early on, like when Lecrae started crossing over, Andy started crossing over, but the industry shifted really fast. It like changed overnight, virtually overnight, with the ways the Spotify hit and Apple Music hit. And so I think we can see that, but I think it would require just everybody being focused on whatever they're faithful to, and more people making reaction videos, and more people making YouTube content, more people making TikTok stuff, so on and so forth, not wanting to separate, but wanting to be connected with different people, even if we don't agree on everything. And I don't know, when I look at the scriptures, I see Paul saying, like, I became all things to all people. When I was with those that had the law, I was like the one that had the law. This is in 1 Corinthians. When I was with those without the law, with the Gentiles, I carried myself as if I didn't have the law, right? And so I think that's what I would like to see from all of us. Never, this is not an excuse to compromise on sin. This is not an excuse to not wage war on sin. This is not an excuse to remain addicted to sin. This is not an excuse to be lukewarm. This is not an excuse to not read your Bible. This is not an excuse to not be in a local church. Just to be clear, because sometimes when you start talking art and culture and music, people are like, oh yeah, we just do whatever we want. That is not what Ruslan is saying. Ruslan is saying if we're rooted in the gospel and we're solid in the essentials, then we could have conversations and diversity and community community despite disagreeing on the non-essentials or the secondary issues. So I could fellowship with someone that is, I don't know, is more charismatic, or I could fellowship with someone that's more reformed, or I could fellowship with someone that's, you know, in a different pocket of industry, or they're a secular artist that's a Christian. There's a lot of those folks that are like found out like there's this next wave of like folks blowing up on TikTok that watch my channel, and they're not Christian artists. They don't want nothing to do with Christian music. They don't make Christian music at all, but they're like fans of what I do. And I'm like, that's dope, right? And I think we could all hold influence in those different pockets. Those are gonna be the next generation of influencers on a broad scale. So yes, I see it happening, but not in the traditional sense where we need a cosign from this media establishment. You need to have a record on radio. You need to have a record here. I think it's going to be a bit unorthodox in that regard. Joshua the King came down and bore it all. Yeah, conversations front of the fireplace. All of my mistakes, how do I erase? Wanna operate at a higher pace. Birth pains causing the body to dilate. On a first name basis with the worst pain facing. Moments in ice.